Hey, what's up guys? Today I decided to do a video on wild edibles. It's been a while since I did any kind of outdoorsy survivalist type stuff. And today I want to talk about pine trees. And I saw some new growth on these and I wanted to let you guys know it's edible. Now before I even start this video, I do want to mention that obviously I'm not an expert and I do not recommend, suggest, or will be responsible for you eating something out in the woods and dying. Of course, you want to seek more information about this kind of stuff and don't take my word for it. Even though I know I'm right, you may have an allergic reaction to it. It can be totally fine for most people, and you watch this video and you go try it and then you get really sick or die. Not my problem. So please don't. It's just for education. Anyway, what we're looking at here is a tree by my house here. And this is an eastern white pine. I just want to give you the overall picture here before I get in close. See, it's next to this telephone pole. It's a good looking pine tree. It looks kind of like scarce, like, I don't know, it looks bald, like it's not a very full, thick, rich tree, but it's very much healthy. It's just the way these happen to grow. So I wanted to show you, getting real close here, and I want to talk about these. Basically, I mean, the needles themselves, as well as this new growth. This new growth is very much edible. Just pop these off. It has a very unique flavor. And I'll show you here, just so you believe me, that I am eating these things. They taste pretty good. Of course, I'm using the side of my mouth, but they have a very unique flavor. It's, well, it tastes like pine wood. Pine saw. Kind of a drying feeling in your mouth, so you don't want to like overdo it. But if you're out in the woods and you're dying, it's definitely something you can add to your diet. It's not something you can solely live on, but it'll definitely help you. Now, what's also extremely common is making pine needle tea. Now, these pine needles, you can just break them right off and eat them as is. Which, here we go again. Just so you guys know, I'm not BSing you. I crouch down here. Pine needles, they're very much edible. It's a little easier when you have front teeth though. So anyway, get back to here. Yeah, pine needle tea is extremely common. What you can do, if you're like quote unquote trailside, or you just walk around the woods, you don't have like a whole setup. And you probably don't have like a T-ball. If you haven't seen a T-ball before, looks something like this. And ideally, to get the best tea out of this, what you'd want to do is collect a bunch of the different needles, and then you want to cut them up into smaller pieces, and then use your T-ball and just open it up, fill the inside with your pine needles, or your cut needles anyway, and then steep it in very hot water. You don't want to use boiling water because you're going to get a lot of vitamin C, as well as some other vitamins and stuff, nutrients from this. But if you use boiling water, it kills off all the good stuff. So you want it hot enough to steep and make tea, but you don't want necessarily it to be boiling. So something to keep in mind there. But of course, you're probably not hiking with one of these, so you can easily make a not as strong drink by just pulling some needles off and basically kind of just twisting them, fold it in half, twist them up a little bit to kind of release some of the oils, and then just, you can drop them in your tea. You wouldn't want to do this because you're going to have a mess. So you'd probably want to just take a clump and maybe just fold them in half and then put them in. This way it's easier to fish them out later. And I mean, if you want to just have the tea and you don't want the needles in there, it's going to be harder the smaller they are, obviously. So, that's pretty much it with this one. I mean, it's pretty common. I mean, some people watch a video and think I'm insane for doing that, but if you're kind of into survival stuff and wilderness living and all that kind of crap, not that it's crap, it's actually pretty fun and interesting. But if you are into that stuff, this is probably one of the most common things, is the pine needle tea. You could do a trail side or whatever. But I did want to mention that the new growth on the pine trees are very much edible. And like I said, they have a very unique flavor. But I find if I have a bunch of them in my mouth at the same time, it's a drying feeling. It's almost like a mouthful of sand. So you kind of just one at a time. It's the best way to do it. But anyway, this is the, like I said, this is, first of all, I'm going to put a link in the description box to a great site that gives you more information on identifying different pine trees. And of course, you can further this into using the seeds, you know, or the pine nuts. And most pine nuts, like, you know, you think about like pesto or something with the bigger pine nuts, you know, and the basil and the oil and all that stuff. That's only a few varieties of pine nuts from pine cones. Most of them are actually extremely small, almost like seeds, which you can use to grind up and use kind of like a flour. But again, if you're just lost in the woods, it's not something you're going to do, honestly. I mean, realistically, this is not something you're going to do. You can go do this for novelty and stuff like that, but you're not just going to knock a pine cone down and rip it open and have a bunch of little pine nuts to snack on. It's just not the case. The majority of them are extremely small. This is something I didn't learn until like maybe last year. But it's really interesting to look around, and if you happen to live in a wooded environment like I do, to look at different trees and have an understanding of what you have around you. So identifying it is pretty interesting. This one, I didn't know the difference between different pine trees until maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. But then I started learning about them more, and you know, you could take books out of the library. You don't always have to just use Google and, you know, get your answer in 2 seconds. Sometimes it's nice to actually go to a library and read a book, you know, so you remember that they still exist. But the way I identified this one as being an eastern white pine, well, first of all, I live in the east, so that's pretty easy. But let me get really close here because I want to show you identifying different pine trees. Is pretty simple. You're basically looking at, if I don't want to break it off, but the little clusters of the needles coming out here. It might be hard to see. Let me kind of push some of these back and get a better view of this. Each little cluster that's coming out of the stem here, and let me get closer. Ah, Jesus. I didn't want to break the tree, but it's not going to hurt it. All right. So each little cluster of needles coming out here, this is the cluster. All right, and what you want to do is you want to count how many needles are in that cluster. So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to try to separate them so you can see them a little better. If you look up top, it's easier to see them all. But there's, come on, there we go. All right, so there's 5 there. That's all one cluster. Okay. So from that point, you can kind of lower the options of what pine trees they are. And then you want to look at other factors such as the overall growth. If you have an adult tree, you know, you can look at the overall shape of it, and then further find out what tree you're looking at. But this kind of stuff can be really fascinating. Very interesting to me. Wild edibles are extremely interesting, but very dangerous. Obviously, you don't want to just start walking around and thinking you know everything and start eating a bunch of crap, because there's a lot of poisonous stuff out there. And it's tricky because, like I said, it could be totally edible to most people, but you may be allergic to it. But you never knew because you weren't walking through the woods foraging, you know? So be careful. Like I said, it's just for entertainment purposes. Don't go off walking around your woods and start eating all your trees. Something else to note is that what's also edible on a pine tree is the inner bark. If I were to cut a chunk of this bark off, you know, and pull the bark, the very inside, underneath where it's dark, but not the actual wood of the tree, there's like a thin layer of it's kind of a fibrous material, and it almost looks like, well, it looks like wood because it's kind of part of it. But if you scrape that off, you can actually boil that up, kind of like a grain or something. It'll soften up and you can eat that. But you'll know if you have wood, because I've tried this before, and if you do have wood in there, it's just too fibrous. You'll be chewing on it and thinking, wow, this part really tastes like wood, and that's because it is. It's a very thin layer in there. And again, this is something that's like, I mean, you're dying, so you're desperate. You know, it's that kind of a thing. You don't want to just start eating your trees for no reason. So anyway, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. I appreciate your time as always. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.